that I really truly enjoy. One of my favorite themes, and one of the things that we talk a lot about in the future. We spoke actually about it in the last panel with James Dedman from Fatser, doing a lot of cool upcycling of residue from oat production, turning that into sugar replacement, sweeteners. So someone else is coming here with something on a plate for me. What is this?
It's a sauerkraut pancake from Stuart Briosa and sour salt
Oh my God.
in the test kitchen right now.
In the test kitchen right now, pancakes with salt. Mm. Mm. That was ridiculous too. The problem with food is you can never do it the proper honor by talking about it. You have to really taste it for yourselves. And I really encourage everyone to run to the test kitchen on one or another occasion here to try it out. But now we're actually moving over to the topic of upcycling. Upcycling is when you take something that has no value and you make something that's incredibly valuable out of it, as the people at Fatser Foodtech does with the shells from oats and turning those into xylitol. I think that's brilliant, and it's done also on an industrial scale. Not everything about upcycling, though, is about the industrial scale. So let's get into a session here. I'm going to showcase a bunch of different upcycling concepts, and then discuss how those can really change the world around us. So let's go with the first one. Ulrika Björnhag, come up here on stage, please. A big round of applause for Ulrika. Here you go. Here's the microphone as well. So the idea here is we're going to take up a couple of these super entrepreneurs dealing with upcycling one-on-one. Tell us a bit about what they're doing, and then we have a panel afterwards. It's super simple. So, Ulrika, what is it that you do that's upcycling-ish?
What we are doing, we take dairy milk cows. So when they not give enough milk, they normally go to slaughter, and we think that's a real waste. So we let them move to our farm. So we have a retirement for old dairy milk cows. And at our place, they only have grass to eat, and grass which we grow in 2 kilometers from our farm. So everything we do is based on sustainability, and we are also climate certified, so this is a very important part of it. But the main issue is to re-cow, to take the cow back and upcycle, as you say, Johan, to do something even better. And what you get is a cow that will work with the biodiversity. She will eat our grass, as I said, and also she will grow fat and have a lovely, tasteful, healthy meat, which is also climate certified, of course. So it's good for the cow, it's good for the environment, and it's also good for our health. So we think it's a win-win-win concept.
It's a win-win-win-win-win-win-win situation. And I think this is actually one of my favorite cases in the food tech world of Sweden, because as all great chefs know, an old milk cow, that's the tastiest meat you can lay your hands on. That's what they try to serve at the very, very top restaurants. The problem is that most of the milk cows out there, after having been in dairy production for a while, and when they don't produce as much, there's nothing left of them.
Yeah.
They're really in bad shape. And so then they're being sent to the slaughterhouse to become meat mince or dog food or something like that, a low-value product. But here you give them a decent life.
Oh.
And while they're running around, roaming around in your green pastures, they're also contributing to biodiversity by, with their hoofs, pushing grass into the ground, storing carbon. With their dung, they feed not just grass, but also insects and other things.
Yeah.
And then, of course, they live a healthy and lovely life. And then when the day comes, they have really completed the full circle.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's amazing, because think about that, how we waste such a thing as a life. Even though we might think that we should eat less meat,
Yeah.
we also need to realize that cows are an integral part of farming.
Yeah.
Now, so we cannot take away cows. We shouldn't. we should do the best we can, and that's what you guys are doing.
Yeah, I think it's important to, when you eat meat, you would think about what was the life of this animal before it landed on my plate. So our cows, they have had a long life full of important things that they have done before they end up finally as meat. And I quite agree, we shouldn't eat as much meat as we do today, but when you eat meat, you should pick it carefully and see what was the traveling, what was the journey towards my plate. That's because that is what makes a difference.
Now, we're also scheming a little bit here, me and Ulrika, because we said that, okay, once this meat is out there, and it's not just accessed by super chefs, once that meat is being compared to regular, factory farm meat in the supermarket, how are you supposed to know what this meat is, right? It's impossible. So what we're trying to do now is, however, is just make sure that we can shift the consumption of meat for, I think the top calculation is 400 families in Stockholm and Gothenburg, because that's the amount you can produce at your farm. So that's the limit, that's the upper limit of the availability of this meat. And we're currently inviting 100 families in Stockholm and Gothenburg to become part of this investigation. And the only thing we ask you is that you shift your meat consumption from the retail sector, from the bad factory meat in the retail sector, to the Haxult cows.
Yeah.
Same price, superior quality, and superior values all through the chain. So, and mind you, this meat will run out. It's not something you can scale, is it? It's impossible. But you can replicate this idea.
Yeah, we could.
You can replicate this idea. And tell me, you had some of Sweden's best chefs enjoy cooking with your meat.
Yeah.
What's their verdict?
Well, they say that it has a very long taste. It's mouth-filling. It stays longer. It has a deeper taste than normal. But what is most different from traditional meat is the mince, because our mince is also age-dried, so it has a real full taste, and it also more fatty than what you get in the supermarket. So, but everything is very, very different. It has another color. It's more red. It's not that oily. It's more dry. And it has a deeper flavor. And it's also much more healthy because they eat only grass. It's full of omega-3 and minerals and vitamins more, because that's what goes into the fat and into the meat when they eat only grass. So it's taste, it looks, and it's also healthier. So again, win-win-win.
A win-win-win situation. And that means also that as soon as you can start getting this direct connection between the consumers and the producers, we also close the information loop.
Yep.
Which means that you can say, so what do you think about that? Should we dry age this a little more or a little less? Shall we try, what other types of details should we produce? What type of meat cuts do you want to have? So suddenly you realize that you can consume not just the fillet of beef, but you can consume a lot of the other things of the cow as well. So you actually enable nose-to-tail cooking from the source itself. I think this is a brilliant upcycling idea. So I'd ask you to move over here, Ulrika.
Yeah.
Please do that. And let's move on to the next one here. Natalie Berzina, where are you? Yeah, there you are. Come here. Oh, way to go. And a big round of applause for you. Are you bringing food to me? Not exactly. So come over here. So you're bringing...
I'm bringing plastic to you.
You bring plastic to me. I don't need to have those mouth covers anymore. Is that stuff you found on your way here?
Yeah, sometimes. And here I'm bringing to you the solution to all this plastic.
Okay. What is this here?
See, there's a tiny insect that are kind of eating this plastic.
Oh, there is a little insect there.
Yeah, you have little insects. You have what we have done. with this piece of plastic, of this polymeric material, within 12 hours.
12 hours, it's chewing away on the plastic.
Yeah.
Isn't that harmful for the insect?
No, it isn't.
It isn't. Okay, so here we have an insect eating plastic. So actually you could feed what you have in your bag there to the insect.
Yeah. So actually, it's when we are talking about plastic, we are usually talking about packaging, something like that. But actually, there are also what we are calling polymeric materials. There's a cloths, there's a sponges, even masks, and different piece of furniture.
Okay.
All this is chemically rather similar, and it's the same difficulty to get rid of it.
Okay, so I get this into my mind. So we can feed plastic to these insects. What happens to the insects then? Are they happy? They just digest it?
Yeah, because with a specific insects, the great tabax moth, actually in nature, they have a very specific ecological niche. They live within the beehive and they consume exclusively beeswax. And beeswax, you may have heard about it, it's a fantastically interesting product. It's completely antimicrobial. We use it to close sterile flasks and so on. But if it's antimicrobial, how does it disappear in nature? For millions of years, but bees do exist and do produce beeswax. Thanks to this insect, we do not have any waste of beeswax in nature because there is, let's say, a specific niche that this insect has elaborated specific enzymes, specific microbiological ecosystem within its gut to digest these materials. And actually, we commonly use plastics that have a chemical structure rather similar to the structure of beeswax. That's how it works.
Okay. So for the insect, you know, whatever plastic you have there, it looks like beeswax. It tastes like beeswax, and they eat them, and you know, they must be full of microplastics then, these insects.
No, because microplastic, when you obtain when you are physically cutting the plastic into tiny pieces. But it's not what the insects do. They are biochemically transforming it. It happens on molecular level. So they're rearranging molecules, they're rearranging atoms to make new molecules that are proteins and lipids.
Okay, so you're saying that the insect here, it chews on plastic and converts plastic to basically proteins and fats.
Yeah.
Could I eat those insects?
You could. You cannot, but you could. The question is a regulation aspect.
Okay, so I could, but I am not allowed.
Yeah.
Okay. So here we have an insect that can chew on plastic, convert plastic to proteins and lipids, food, and then I'm not allowed to eat them.
Not yet, at least.
Not yet, at least. Okay, but tell me how much. You know, I saw that little piece of sponge you had there, and it's been there for 12 hours.
Yeah.
And I saw that the insect has already consumed quite a lot of it.
Yeah.
And that was just one insect, or how many do you have in there?
3 of them.
3 insects. So, and how long time would it take them to devour that sponge?
Let's say within a few days it will be completely gone.
Okay.
But actually, to avoid them to starve, we will reintroduce new sponge before they have totally get rid of this one.
So you basically just feed them plastic. Okay, and of course you can scale up insects, right? So they're really good at growing and making insect babies. Okay, wonderful. So Natalie, this is a pretty cool thing. But you've been in this insect world for quite some time now, right?
Yeah.
One of the founders of Insect, I understand, once upon a time, or
one of the executives, not
Yeah.
founder, but executive of Insect. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Insect is one of these large super companies in France right now, you know, hoarding capital from venture capitalists and just growing like crazy. But this, to me, is actually more mind-blowing than what Insect does. So where are you taking this now, Natalie?
Actually, there was an academic paper back in 2017, and people were working with those insects for completely different purposes, and they got just lazy. They put them into a plastic bag and they forget them for overnight. When they came the other morning, they have seen the insects everywhere and they hold in the bag. And that's how it all started.
You know, it seems like penicillin. Wasn't that the same type of discovery?
Exactly.
An unintended experiment. you know.
Exactly.
Lovely. So what do you think we could do with plastic then in the future, these insects? So we could farm these insects by giving them plastic and then we eat the insects or feed them to animals perhaps?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's the way to do it. And I really like the way that it's a natural solution. Because let's say our modern chemistry, it's what about it's 150, 200 years, and nature has millions of years to make all kinds of different experimentation in terms of chemical behavior, chemical reactions, and so on. So actually, I think when we have such type of problems, we really should look into nature to understand how nature has solved those problems. And actually, those insects is the solution for this specific problem of plastic waste.
This is another one of those, of course, that blows you away. So you can say you can convert, with the help of insects, plastic waste to food. And of course, we have a lot of things to feed the insects. You all know that, right? But are they dangerous in it? Do they bite or poisonous or anything like that, those insects?
So until now, we didn't, those insects, they do not bite. They're really harmless. And it's the reason why they have survived, just because we have this very specific ecological niche. So it's really fantastic.
It's absolutely amazing. Have you given the chefs some of the insects for them to try out? On the
Not yet.
Not yet. But okay, so you're scaling this up now.
Yeah.
So what will be the end product that you sell to people? Is it plastic removal or is it animal feed or?
It's actually both, because we're specifically focusing on the plastic which is not recycled by other means. We are really replacing the incineration by saving 67% of the CO2 emissions by doing our process. And so that's why we are offering a service of handling of plastic waste. And at the end of the process, we are also offering products, which are proteins, lipids, and biofertilizers.
Oh, amazing. Okay, so the future is truly plastic. That's absolutely true. Okay, another amazing idea. Let's give it up for Natalie.
Thank you.
Avyatya, are you here? There you are. Come up on stage. Now, you also have stuff with you that you can eat. Oh, I love my guests. So what is this? Is this from you, or did you make
yes,
this?
this is donuts that the chefs in the test kitchen made from spent grain flour.
Okay.
So please, and then there's some lemon.
I can have
for-
the first one, so you don't have to be afraid that this is poisonous in any way.
It's not.
Oh, it's not.
My God, this is good. What shall we have? Take one and give to somebody else in the audience. Hallelujah. Sorry, while I'm munching, what is spent grain?
Well, spent grain is basically as the word says, it's grain that has already been spent. But when we brew beer, we use grains. We cook the grains, they go through the maltery first, and then we cook them. In the brewery, we use the sugar and the starch, and then the rest is basically wasted. 70% of the spent grains in Europe go to feed for cows and pigs and so forth, and 20% goes to the landfill, and 10% go into energy. But there's no reason to do this. We can take the spent grains, we can rescue them like you rescue the cows, and we can upcycle them into nutritious and super delicious flour, which we then again can reuse into ready-to-eat products. So this is basically what we do.
So basically, you can say you start out by having grain that you could make flour out of, and then you brew beer out of it, and then you get some remnants of that, and then you just turn that back again into, well, flour then.
Exactly.
It's ridiculous.
Beer is a huge industry worldwide.
Yeah.
Every year we brew and drink 200 billion liters of beer. This produces more than 40 million tons of spent grain. And these grains, if we upcycle them into human food, they can cover 10% of the calorie deficit that the WHO is forecasting for 2027. So it's a massive resource that we need to take back into the food hierarchy.
So you said 40 million tons, or billion, what was a million tons?
40 million ton.
40
It can generate more than 8 1,000 tons of flour. It's a lot of flour.
Huh. So, and that's just from the beer sector. Do we,
It's only from beer.
do we spend grain from elsewhere as well?
Well, I mean, everywhere where you take a resource and only use part of it, you will have a spent something. We know it from coffee, where you have the spent coffee grounds. We know it from cows, where you have the spent cow,
Cows,
basically. And then you have the spent grain. What is unique about spent grain is that it's grain. So it's quite easy to understand for chefs. It's easy to understand for consumers. It's very versatile and applicable to almost every diet in the world, because we all have grains as part of our base diet. I mean, we're talking food tech here, but there's a reason why it's called food tech.
Yeah.
We need to focus on the food part more and not only on the tech part. Tech is very important, but we need to make food for people. We heard yesterday that we have like a growing crisis
Yep.
with a lot of people being food insecure.
I'm just thinking about all those 8,000 tons of flour and what that currently could do for people in Africa and the Middle East. Definitely a game changer. So how do you take the spent grain back? You dry it.
We collect the spent grain, or we buy the spent grain basically from the breweries. And then in our production facility, we separate the spent grain into a liquid and a dry fraction. The dry fraction we then dry even more and mill into the flour. And the wet fraction, we are building an ingredient for plant-based milk alternatives. It's not fully ready for the market yet, but it will be in the coming 3, 4, 5 months.
It's just like a normal flour.
It's like a whole grain flour. Like a whole grain flour, but it's super high on nutrition. It's 20% protein and 50% dietary fiber.
So actually, the brewing process has made the flour from spent grain more nutritious than flour from...
No, I won't say it makes it more nutritious, but it releases some enzymes during the process that makes the nutrients more approachable for the human metabolism.
The bioavailability, I think, is one of the key words here. So suddenly we have flour that is more bioavailable to people. That's bloody amazing. Please take your seat. Eva-Lena, where are you? Eva-Lena, come up on stage here as well. Eva-Lena, next one. Yeah, big round of applause, both for Aviadja and for Eva-Lena. So, Eva-Lena.
Hello.
Who are you?
I'm here representing Big Aqua. I think we do have a slide.
You have a slide. Let's click here and see.
Yeah. What we focus on is to fulfill the purpose that we need sustainable protein. And to do so, we need to do it in large scale. So that's the whole need we will try to be a part of solving that problem.
Okay, so what do you do to solve this?
We want to build in industrial symbiosis process together a big fish farm, up to 6,000 tons per year. And we will do that in a combination with a industrial site. It could be a paper mill, it could be a hydrogen plant. So what we're doing is that we're using the rest stream from them, either is process heat or from a hydrogen plant, it's oxygen, happen to be a rest flow. Who could believe that oxygen should be a waste flow on this planet, but this is how it's treated. So we use those flows to make the fishes grow more efficient in a good, sustainable way. And then we give them our nutrition, the fish shit, to put it that way. And by using that, the nutritions in that flow in a correct way, we can as well start to grow, looking into to grow protein, to be fish food or other animal food. So more or less we're trying to work in industrial symbiosis between already existing process industry to use that land and not, so we don't need to use new land that should be used for growing crops that could only be growing there, for instance.
So basically what you say, you turn industrial sites into food production plants.
Yeah.
because there are so many rest streams there
Yeah.
that you can start to
Yeah,
use.
and you have everything there. You have the power, you have the heat, you have electricity, you have employment, you have people working there, and you have logistic parks. So you need to reuse a lot of different resources on this planet, not only nutrition and oxygen and things. You need to be careful on how you use land. The
And-
way it will develop, independent of more or less what we're doing now, where we can grow food. As you said earlier on, there are people starving on this planet. Where we can grow and how much of the land that is available to grow food will decrease. So then we need to use the land, the clean, healthy land, in a good way. Your cows need to be there. And then if you learn how to grow high sustainable protein on this industrial site, that's another way of option.
What would they have done with the rest streams unless you had been there?
The most common way up today to grow, it feels strange to say grow when you're talking about an animal, but the way we grow fish is you have it in the ocean, and then in many places they pollute because they
cannot take care of the rest
They
stream.
cannot take
Okay,
care.
so here we're talking about some of the planet's largest problems, you know, polluting rest streams from industry. We talk about spent grain and thousands of tons. We talk about all the plastic in the world. And how many dairy cows do we waste every year in Sweden? Do you know? Okay, but it's tens of thousands, yes. So we're wasting our way into hell, right? So how is it even possible to calculate the opportunities and the value that you can capture by thinking of upcycling here? We were talking hundreds of billions, probably, something like that.
I think it's difficult to calculate it in a number because it's as well a mind shift. If you can see something good and see the properties in a flow, for instance, in your grain or in your cows or in your bugs, instead of seeing it as a problem, and see this is good because it's been a grain from a brewery, and then you have this type of quality. You said that some enzymes were more released in a way. See the changed property in a better way than only focus on this is the way the flour needs to be, this is the way a cow needs to be, and see that as something positive instead of something, oh, it better should have been as it's always have been. Then I think we'll open up for an incredibly large industry. I used to say that my bracelets, it's a perfect example of that. It used to be a fork.
That's a spent fork.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But instead of
It's a bent fork.
Spent bent fork. But instead of seeing as a problem that it's used to be a fork, they made something beautiful out of it. So it's a mind shift. And I think it's difficult to value it in cash. I think you need to value it from, when I work with businesses, I'm trying to move them away from talking sustainability. I want to talk how you create future attractive businesses. Because as all three of you have done, and even though Big Aqua, we have found a slot where we fulfill a really need for the society, and we do it in a way so it will be attractive, although when prices of raw material are going up or whatever.
Interesting. I'm looking at Daniela right now. Do we have Stuart here as well? Stuart, up on stage. Come up on stage, man. We need to have the chef's perspective here as well. Oh, you also brought something. What is this? Let's talk garum salt. Garum, that's the age-old Roman fish sauce, isn't it?
It's derived. Yes, it is. It's
If you put the mic here, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, thanks.
It's essentially a spice blend that was meant to really cover up the stench of salted and fermented fish that was turned into a sauce. And so a variety of spices, and the recipes are very, have evolved, of course, and there's a little poetic license in that. So this particular salt, for example, is an interesting product in a collaboration that I do with a fish sauce maker out of Vietnam called Red Boat. And they produce fish sauce in the old traditional way, right? Where the anchovies, it's a black anchovy that's caught in the sort of southern Vietnamese waters there, kind of right in the Cambodia, Vietnam sector of the island of Phu Quoc. And the anchovies are salted and fermented traditionally in big mango wood casks. And then the fish sauce, after about 7 or 8 months of fermentation, have been removed from the tanks. And the variation of nitrogen and salt levels are going to be different from each tank because it's not, these are salted on board, these fish, right? So they salt them, and so each tank has probably got a different degree of salt percentage, roughly averaging about 25%. And it goes through a desalination process, which is purely just bringing the fish sauce, the finished fish sauce, down in temperature. And salt and nitrogen crystallize in a sludgy manner at the bottom of these tanks. And then the fish sauce is strained out and the sludge is left at the bottom. So it's a byproduct that's incredibly umami rich. And when I was working with Kung Pham, the owner of the company, he had this and he asked about it, and so we dehydrated it on screens under the Vietnamese sun and took this sludge, this nitrogen-rich umami salt, and we ground it after, and it's very heavy, and it's got a very strong aroma, as you can imagine. But he essentially I took the salt in and started to play with it in the restaurant, and it reminded me of kind of this dried garum, and it needed some accentuation in the form of spices. So we do a ton of drying of our own and dehydrating, and so I took orange peels, specifically off of a kishu tree, which is a little Japanese citrus, and we dried these out, and I started to aromatize the salt with orange peel and other spices, things, like in the Roman, what I consider like a Roman salt. So fennel seed and coriander seed and chili flakes and black pepper and garlic and thyme and oregano. And all of a sudden I take this almost putrid like salt, so intense on the aroma, and it just turned into, as you can smell, a very umami rich seasoning salt that we like to use as a finishing salt. And I suppose it's a method of upcycling, right? It's I like to more or less look at it how we have a motto in our restaurants in San Francisco that the compost bin is a missed opportunity for creativity, right? So the more we fill the compost bin, the more opportunities are lost, so to speak. So what that really translates to is that we take every opportunity to take food products and transform it into another life, so to speak. And so some of you may have tasted the salts that we did downstairs. These are what I call sour salts, are fermented ingredients that are then dehydrated at a very low temperature. In Fahrenheit, it's 115 degrees, which still remains as what's considered a raw food, right? So it holds on to the beneficial nutrients and all the sort of lactic acids and the things that you get, the beneficials from eating fermented foods, but you also get an umami boost. So it's not done for any other reason than to add another texture, another element of an ingredient. And so that is what this is here, but on a collaborative basis, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, like, I get you're no stranger to anchovies because that's what you're doing, right? You're the owner and the head chef for the Anchovy Bar in San Francisco, where you
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about that, by the way.
Sure. So the Anchovy Bar is one of three restaurants that we operate. We operate all three restaurants on the same block. So we have a very symbiotic relationship amongst all three. And anchovies they're a local ingredient. Nobody really realizes that in San Francisco. I mean, I would say probably 3 or 4% of locals who live there know that we actually have anchovies. It's very surprising. And anchovies are bait fish in our world. There's one anchovy fisherman who goes out and sells on the commercial market. And I met him 12 years ago, maybe a few years, 15 years ago. And at the time, I think that he sold on the commercial food market, maybe 15% of his catch went to actual human food. The other 85% went to fishermen who were using the anchovies specifically to catch larger trophy fish, right? Things like wild salmon, cod, halibuts, the sport fish, recreation fish, as well as commercial fishing. And, I'm happy to say that in the last 12 years, and we've done a lot of work with anchovies, I've taken them on as a passion, namely because I hadn't had my own experience with fresh fish. And what we've done in the kind of restaurant market is we've improved the logistics of anchovies. And what I mean by that is that anchovies are, 15 grams at best, right? 10 to 15 gram sized fish. So their change and deterioration happens very quickly, right? So you take a salmon, right? Large fish, 15-pound fish, and you've got several days of real peak freshness before it even goes into rigor mortis. Anchovies are hours out of the water. They start to change. And in the early days of anchovy work, I was getting anchovies anywhere from 12 to 24 hours, maybe even a little longer out of the water, which seems very quick, right? Normally, that sounds very fresh. But the difference in the quality of the fish change hour by hour. And we have set up a system now in San Francisco that restaurants will receive anchovies generally 2 hours out of water. And in our own kitchen, we have kind of what we call the anchovy protocol, which is, when the anchovies arrive through the front door of the restaurant, we stop what we're doing and we throw a team of 6 to 8 chefs on anchovy production. And the goal is to take 20 pounds or so of anchovies, which is an awful lot of fish, and to turn that into an hour to an hour and a half's worth of work to get them processed, cleaned, and into the pickle, or the salt, or we also serve them fresh as well. But by removing the insides immediately, the deterioration and the life just changes. So our goal is to get the fish in production. We're talking now 4 hours out of water. And this process has become imperative, and it actually informed and inspired a whole restaurant for us called the Anchovy Bar. And the real goal, what we've learned over the last 12 years working with Eric, who's the fisherman, is that we've seen that increase of 15% 12 years ago in the the local food market, and we're operating now at about 30% is actually going and feeding people, which is great, and people are obviously more educated. And every night I can tell you, we serve approximately 100 people, and easily 15 to 20% don't realize that we have a local ingredient that is just, you've seen the Golden Gate Bridge, that's where we're fishing. It's between that and Alcatraz and, kind of the mouth of the bay. and here are these bait fish that swarm and circulate. So
I think that's ultra cool. And now, I think this is interesting because now we've been talking about upcycling. Our time is up. But I'd like to point out that here we have 5 excellent examples on how you can take something that is considered worthless and then turning it into something that's super valuable. It's not just normal valuable, it's super valuable. And to me, that's the great unsung story of the next revolution in food and food tech. So thank you so much for bringing your milk cows to us, for having your bugs eat the plastics, for giving us enzyme-enriched flour, for taking stuff, pollutants from factories and turning it into fish. And thank you for making us taste things in a new way. A big round of applause for the upcyclers. So folks, we have 5 minutes break for me. You can chill around or